You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in our friend Michael Geller, owner and attorney at the Geller firm in San Francisco, California, focused on family law matters. Michael, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Benny.
Yeah, it's great to see you finally after a year. It seems like years of talking and communicating and, watching you do your thing and grow your firm. Congrats on your success.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man, for sure. Tell us, just as a baseline, where are you from, born and raised?
So I was born in the former Soviet Union,
Okay.
which is modern day Uzbekistan. I was born in the capital in Tashkent.
Wow.
I came to San Francisco when I was 5 years old, and I was there up until I was an adult.
Wow. Okay. That's unbelievable. So you came over when where were you until you were an adult?
San Francisco. I lived in the city.
That's amazing. Okay. And you've been there ever since. Okay, good. I know you did you went a short stint to New York. We'll talk about that. So you have, let's jump into your education a little bit. You have a BA from USC/LA. I don't know if it's referred to as USC/LA actually, but that's what I wrote in my notes. And then you went back for a BS at City University of New York in Queens. So you have two bachelors, sort of.
Yes. So what happened with that is there's a whole story to that. What happened with that was I first went to college for my undergraduate education at the University of Southern California. You are correct. That is in Los Angeles.
Right.
I got my bachelor's, but the bachelor's was in sociology with a minor in business law. There's not much you can really do with that degree. So I ended up going back to school, and I got a second bachelor's, but the plan wasn't necessarily to get a second bachelor's. The plan was to enter the field of medicine. And the reason I wanted to do that was my mother wanted me to become a doctor.
Okay.
And I did not want to become a doctor.
Okay.
But she was so fixed on it, and it was her dream for her son to become a MD, that I wanted to fulfill that desire for her.
Wow.
So we kind of had a little compromise that instead of me going the full route and going to medical school and then going through residency, what I would do is I would become a physician assistant, which is a PA.
Right.
So the program I got into was the program in New York. It's at the City University of New York in Queens. They had a program at York College, and I applied to that program. I was accepted. At the time, it unfortunately was not a graduate degree. In 2024, it's a Master of Science. But back when I went in 2011, at the time it was still a bachelor's program.
Wow.
So I went through the entire program, and they awarded me a Bachelor of Science.
That's amazing that it would only be a bachelor's degree too. That's a lot of work. I mean, was it another 4 years?
So it took 3 years to get it, because there's a lot of prereqs that you have to do in order to qualify for the
Right.
program. And then it's an intensive 24-month program that includes summers. So
Wow.
when you become a physician assistant, you're covering 85% of the medical doctor program in 50% of the time.
Wow. Okay.
And then you walk out, you don't do residency, but you're seeing patients, you're writing prescriptions, you're doing injections. You
Right.
have pretty much full rights to see patients.
Yeah, that's right. That's so different than law. I mean, meaning the type of study, a lot of people say that they go to law school because they stay away from the mathematics and that sort of thing and the science. I mean, how did you feel going through that program, like the medical program? Did it feel like something that you were passionate about at the time?
Yeah, so I really liked medicine. I really liked the science, and I found it very interesting. What ended up becoming more challenging was more of the patient care side of it.
Okay.
I got into pain medicine, and pain medicine is a very challenging field, just kind of because of the nature of the patient population that you're dealing with.
Wow. Okay. And you did that for like 7 years. You were like
That's
a,
correct.
almost 7 years. You were a physician's associate, and then you went to law school. Tell me about like that time period of like working and then like leading up to being like, I need to go to law school. Like, didn't your
So
okay? So like, wasn't your mother like just become like a doctor or a lawyer? She just wanted the doctor, huh? Like the
she
that.
wanted the doctor.
Okay, so
In
there
my
was like no
family,
option. There was no doctor, lawyer. Like, wow. Okay.
in in my mom's vision, if you're not an MD, you're a failure.
Wow. Okay.
So for her, it was, go to medical school and, you're the greatest. And if you don't, you're an absolute failure,
Is she a
which,
doctor, by the way?
so she's a dentist.
Okay, gotcha.
She's a foreign dentist, and then she's a modern, in America, she's also a nurse practitioner. So she has
Gotcha.
dual degrees as well.
Okay. Smart family. All right. So tell me about like leading up. That's really interesting to me. Like starting to generate these thoughts of like, all right, I think I want to go to law school. Like, here I am. Like, were you working in New York too?
So
Or you were back in California?
no, so what happened was, as soon as I graduated PA school, I got married and moved to Los Angeles. And the first job I got as a PA was in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I was working at a place called Synovation Medical Group, and it was a pain medicine population. So a lot of what I did, what I like to say is, I had a screensaver that would say Drug Enforcement Administration,
Huh.
because a lot of the work that I did wasn't actually medical. People
Right.
would come in and they're essentially addicted to opioids. And I started practicing during the opioid epidemic.
Okay.
I started practicing right when, if you're familiar with hydrocodone or Norco, it just changed from being a Schedule 3 medication to a Schedule 2 medication, which
Hmm.
means that prescribing it is more challenging. And we had all of the companies being accused of, hey, you guys are, the doctors are overprescribing, the pharmacists are overfilling, over dispensing, and it was a mess, because every patient that comes in, before you write a prescription, you have to do a lot of different things. So you first have to make sure that you screen them. So we had a system called Cures in California. Every state has one of these. And
Hmm.
what you're doing is you're going through the system and you're checking to see what the patient was prescribed in the past. And you're looking for like the last 6 months to a year, and you're checking which doctors did they see, which pharmacies did they fill, what was the medication, what was the dose, how frequently are they filling these prescriptions. And you're trying to see if there's any behavior of where they are shopping for doctors to get different prescriptions, because that's what a lot of drug addicts would do. They'll go to Dr. A and they'll get a prescription. They'll go complain about something else to Dr. B, get a prescription. Then they'll go to Dr. C and get a prescription. So we would have to first check the system to make sure that that wasn't happening. Now, the next step that I would have to do is I'd have to do a urine drug test. Every time a patient came in, I'm running urine drug tests to see, are there any illegal drugs?
Hmm.
Are the drugs that I'm actually prescribing in the person's urine? Because there's two things that could be going on. One, they're getting the legal opioids from me, they're selling them, and then they're going and buying meth, and they're going and buying
Wow.
cocaine, and
Wow.
they're going and buying, all these illegal substances that they could then overdose on, and I would be responsible for it, because I'm essentially prescribing it
Right.
without checking. So that's the second thing. Then there's the third layer. You're coming in and you're checking, do they actually need opioids? Will opioids actually help them? So what you're doing then is, you have to do a full physical exam. You have to run some lab work. You have to run diagnostic tests. You run X-rays. You do CT scans. You do MRIs. You send them to physical therapy. You send them for injections. Now, when all of this is failing and you're seeing that, hey, this person has an actual diagnosis, there was either a traumatic injury, they have cancer, or they have any other kind of condition where they've tried non-opioid management and they're still in pain and they're trying to function. So then you try to see if opioids can help them. And sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is no. Because
Wow.
if there's risk of overdose, I can't prescribe opioids to them because the risk of them dying is higher than the risk of them being in pain.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot. All right. Um, so, you go through all this, and I'm just curious about the transition to the law. You've learned all this. Obviously, you've got yourself educated. You're working in the medical field. When did it start creeping in that I need to go back to law school?
It was about my second year of practice where I was seeing patients. I'd sometimes see like 40 patients a day,
Wow.
and I'm like, I'm just unfulfilled and I'm stressed and I'm unhappy. And I'm starting to think like, hey, I should have listened to my gut feeling when I wanted originally to go to law school. Now, the reason I'm saying that originally to go to law school is because before I actually accepted the program to go to PA school, I was admitted to a couple law schools,
Okay.
but I never actually went to law school. I
Okay.
decided to, hey, mom, I'll listen to you on this. You may potentially be right. There's also some professors actually that would be talking students out of going to law school. I had a professor at USC when I was a
Mm.
senior, and he was an attorney, and he was saying, "Hey, don't go to law school. There's no jobs." And
Right.
granted, there was a recession and jobs were limited, so he was partly right. But at the same time, for the most part, everyone I know today that became a lawyer has a job. So I think that was a little exaggerated that no one's gonna be able to find a
I
job.
feel like they say that every year, to be honest. I mean, I don't know what year that was for you, but I feel like I hear that every year. Like maybe not anymore, but back like in like the earlier 2000s, like they would always be, oh, there's no legal jobs. Don't go there.
Right.
There's no legal job. I feel like that was just like what they would always say. So then if it's 2 years in, you still worked another five?
So yeah, so then in order for me to become a lawyer, I have to go to law school. But at the same time, I'm married, I have a child on the way, and I'm like, hey, I can't just quit work. The only way for me to go to law school is to go part-time. So I applied to a part-time program, and then I'm pulling 18-hour days for the next 4 years.
Wow.
So I would be a PA in the daytime, and then I'd be a law student in the evening. So my day would start at 8, end at 5, and then I'd go to law school between 6 and 9, and then I drive home. Between From the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, I've just had 18 hours, and I have sleep for 6 hours, and then you repeat this for 5 days.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. You close your eyes and you're like, you open them and that's it. It's like you're up already, ready to go. What,
Right. Those 4 years are like a blur.
a blur. Yeah, totally. Um, wow. So like, what advice can you give somebody who wants to like switch careers?
I mean, if I give any advice regarding switching careers, I would say follow your passion. Make sure that, I mean, what they say with, if you if you do something that you love, you're not really working. That's only true to a certain extent. If you're doing things that you don't like, it's absolutely going to feel like work. But if you're doing things that you enjoy, then it's going to feel less tedious, and you're actually going to wake up and you're going to look forward to it. I would say anyone that wants to switch careers, you should absolutely do it. The short amount of time that it'll take you to study and prepare for that career while also working your current career will absolutely be worth it down the line.
Do you think there were any benefits to like going to law school later, like having a job for, 7 years and then going back to law school, even though you weren't a full-time student, you were going like at night. Would you say that there's some benefits?
There were some benefits. So I would say it was, besides the fact that it was challenging and besides the fact that I didn't have a regular cohort of being a full-time student and having access to internships in the daytime, I would say some of the benefits was that as soon as I stopped, as soon as I stopped working as a PA, I was in a position where I was able to start my own firm without having to work for someone else first. If I finished at when I was
Okay.
25 as my first career, there was no way I'd be able to do that
Why do you think that?
because I had savings. As you know, after being in medicine for 7 years, I had savings, I had a
Okay.
retirement account. I was
Gotcha.
able to pull that money, put it into a checking account, and say, hey, I can start my own firm, and I have enough savings to get me through the next 6 months. And if I
Wow,
don't
that's
have a
amazing. Good
business,
for you.
I can push through that.
Because you believed in yourself, man.
So that
You
was hard
believed
as
in
well.
yourself. You know,
That
that
was
had to be
absolutely
like
hard.
difficult too, you know, especially, you know, making that transition. I mean, I think that's incredible that you did that. That's a very big pivotal part, obviously, of your story. You know, going from a very difficult regimen in school, like you explained it actually for me, like going through basically medical school, except the residency, working for 7 years in a, you know, a very high stress job, and then doing law school. I mean, you went back to law school and then saying, you know, you got to start your own firm. So, like, you know, what advice could you give somebody who wants to launch their own firm?
Listen to yourself. There's a specific pivotal moment that I remember. I received this one email from a superior at a previous job that I had. As soon as I read that email, I was ready to resign. And
Really?
yes, I'm not going to go into it, but it's one of those things where you're like, hey, you know what? I can't do this anymore, and I can't work for anyone else anymore.
So this
I,
was in the medical field. You got this
correct.
email. Okay.
As I was trying to transition out, I was still kind of unsure. Am I going to start working for myself? Am I going to work for someone else? I had some places that were interested in potentially hiring me, but there was a couple considerations. One was, do I want to work for anybody else, or do I want to start, you know, my own firm?
Right.
Then there was the position of, if I'm working for someone else, then essentially I'm back to where I am right now, which means I have to listen to someone else and do as they say. And then one day I'm going to want to start my own firm, and then I'm starting from scratch.
Okay.
So, so my belief is, if you want to have your own firm, you should absolutely do it. And there's always going to be naysayers. I mean,
Sure.
friends and people in my that I'm family and friends with were telling me, hey, you don't know the law. You've never ran a business. You're going to
Right.
fail at both. In 6 months, you're going to be
Wow.
filling
Good
out papers
friends,
for the
huh?
CA. So I mean, they were looking out for me. It
Yeah.
wasn't advice to discourage me. It was more of, hey, be careful. You
Right.
worked hard to get to where you are. If things are slow, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to pay the mortgage? How are you going to feed your family? So they were looking out for me.
Do you see any crossover, like when you were starting like law school between, you know, besides working very hard? I mean, was there a crossover between the medical field and you know, doing law stuff?
I mean, the crossover is being able to work with people. So just like some of the pain medicine patients were challenging because of their circumstances,
Yep.
a lot of the things that I do today are challenging because of the circumstances. So the family law clientele, they're going through a very devastating part of their life, and dealing with some of these emotions
Yep.
is challenging.
I mean, did you ever think, okay, I'm going to go to law school. I have all this like medical knowledge. I'm going to be like a medical malpractice or personal injury attorney, and you know, use some of this to my advantage.
Absolutely. So originally I thought I would go into personal injury and I'd use the medical knowledge, and I'm like, hey, it's going to make me a better lawyer. I have all this background. But the thing with personal injuries, it's extremely competitive,
Sure.
and you need a billboard if you want to be one of those top firms. And those
Yep.
billboards are like $40,000 a month. So if you're
Really? That's crazy, man.
they're expensive. So I mean, I guess it depends on location, but some of the ones I looked at, that's what they were looking at. I'm like, that price is just insane for a new attorney that came out of law school.
Yeah. No.
And you'll put up ads on Google, you can put up ads on Yelp. For the most part, it's going to take a lot of time until you get one of those bigger verdicts to
Right.
a regular flow. And
But
because it's
California,
contingency.
man, I do have to say, like, you know, some of these things I see on social media, these people signing those verdict sheets, it's like ridiculous. Some of those numbers that I see. I mean, like if you hit it right, if you get a good case, woof, wild.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the thing with personal injury is, from the day that you got the client to the day you actually get paid is like 2 years.
Yeah. Or
So
more.
again,
Or
or
more.
more. Well, no, you
Yeah.
got to file a lawsuit within 2 years.
Right.
But you have to be able to survive that 2 years span of, hey, nothing coming in. So because
Yeah.
it's all
Oh yeah.
contingency based.
For sure. So we're doing family law. We're going to get into that in a minute. Do you ever see yourself going back to the medical field?
Maybe as like maybe administration or
Okay.
leadership, but not or policy making. but I don't think I'd go back as a provider.
So, what was your actual law school experience like? I mean, but aside from, obviously working full time, going at night, 6 hours of sleep, what was your experience like? Like, if you all else being equal.
It was awesome. I really enjoyed law school. I actually thought law school was significantly easier than PA school.
Oof. Okay.
So
All right.
anyone that complains to me about law school, I dismiss it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Um, so you went into your practice right after law school. Like, what was that like? Like, you graduate law school. Did you wait to pass the bar? Like, what? Like, when did you? Obviously, you have to pass the bar to have your own firm, but tell us like how that happened.
So I graduated law school. It was the middle of the pandemic, and the July bar became the September bar. The September bar became the October bar.
Okay.
Uh, Prior to the bar being moved, I saved every single hour of vacation that I had so that I could study for the bar and use all of that vacation hours all at once and
Right.
basically get paid while I'm studying. So I go on quote unquote vacation to study for the bar and I use up most of it and then it gets delayed. So I
Oh.
just wasted my time.
Oh. The
Then
worst.
I go back to work and now I have to work full time because the vacation hours are gone and I have to study for the bar at the same time.
Oh
It
my.
gets delayed again from September to October. So I worked full time during bar prep, essentially, besides the little limited time I had off. And then I collected about, I want to say 5 days of vacation time. So I took 5 days off before the bar
Right.
and I would study more. And then I went and just took the exam. I'm like, and it was the online exam. So again,
Right. I
that
was
was
just gonna ask, was it remote? Like that time, it was like okay.
So it was a remote exam, but I actually went to the actual hotel to take the bar exam
Okay.
because they were
Was it?
saying that, hey,
It was administered at the same time for everybody, but it was like remote, right? So you went to
correct.
a hotel. Okay.
I requested to do it at the hotel with a proctor because I'm like, I'm not risking any opportunity that something happens in my background and they think I cheated. So I'm like, I'm just going to go, let there be a live person there and
Oh,
let
that
them
was
make sure that I'm doing everything right. And
so
I
that was
just,
an option. Like, did you have to wear a mask and stuff like that?
you had to wear a mask. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's crazy. Good for you, man. So you pass, obviously. And then like what? Tell us like what happened after that.
So after that, I passed. I worked another 6 months in medicine as I was starting my firm and trying to figure things out. I did a very short, like 6 week internship at the Solano County DA's office.
Hmm.
That cut short because of work. There were some things that happened, and I was able to then get some more vacation hours. So I used that to do the internship. That got cut short because I was resigning. And then as that happened, I'm like, hey, I gotta either proceed with the firm or I gotta find a job. But that's it. Like I'm retiring from medicine. My
Wow.
stethoscope is going to be
Did,
back up on the
did they
wall.
know? Like, did the people you were working with, your colleagues in medicine, know you're like, you're studying for the bar? Were you walking around all day with note cards, like, like studying for the bar? Like, did they know you were on
Oh,
the
of course,
track
yeah. So
to?
everyone at work knew that I was going through law school. Everyone knew that I was studying for the bar. They were fully aware that as I would graduate, that I'd be moving on.
Wow. Okay.
Most of them were very supportive.
Yeah.
I had a really, I had a really good manager who supported pretty much everything throughout this process. So I'm extremely grateful to her.
That's awesome. That's great when you can find somebody who that's a good quality in a manager, somebody who wants you to succeed and do well. So that's great. That means a lot. So the Geller firm. Tell us about your law firm and tell us why family law.
That's a great question. So family law, the way it kind of happened is because I was a part-time student, a lot of the classes that were available to me in the evening, elective wise, they happen to be family law classes. So I took community property, I took just the general family law class, I took the domestic violence class. So these classes that were available in the evening, they happened to be professors who were also teaching in the evening. So I picked up some of those skills. Then we had a guest speaker in one of these classes. His name is BJ Fatum, and he's
Right.
an attorney in San Jose. And I honestly grateful to everything that he has done for me because if it wasn't for him, I would not be practicing independently today.
Wow.
So he was a guest speaker. he was so helpful to me to the point where when I was looking for an internship, he offered to pretty much teach me everything. Because you come out of law school, you don't really know how to file for divorce unless you did an
Yeah.
internship. When you're a part-time evening student, you don't have access to those internships. So as I graduated, I reached out to him. I reached out to a bunch of different places, but everyone else pretty much said no. Hey, we're not looking for interns. We're busy. We don't want to
Yeah.
teach. And he opened the doors to his firm, and he taught me how to file petitions, how to file responses. He taught me how to do financial disclosures. He taught me
Wow.
he taught me how to do a consultation. Like
Did you start building your relationship with him like as he was teaching like in the school, or was this through the email you sent him after you graduated?
So after he did a guest lecture in one of the classes, I reached out to him a little bit later and asked for an internship, and I started building a little bit of a relationship with him. And he's such a nice guy. He offers to teach pretty much anyone that's interested in an internship. He opens his office to them, and
Wow, so nice.
he was absolutely instrumental to me being able to do what I'm doing, because he has served as a mentor even up until today. I literally would not be where I am today without him.
Okay. That's amazing. Yeah, I actually was going to ask you about mentors, like if you had a mentor and what the importance of a mentor is. So that's good.
I mean, what happens? I mean, even today, people look at your bar number, they see you're a higher number, and a lot of the time they don't think that you know what you're doing. And sometimes when that happens, if there's a question I have or something I've never dealt with before, I pick up the phone, I give him a call, and he'll be able to kind of guide me through what needs to be done, and sometimes even co-counsel with me on a case.
Oh, nice. That's great. That's interesting. I never thought of it like that. Is that like I mean, I think we all have bar numbers in different states, but is that like a California thing where they're like, "Oh, look at this guy. He's number 75 billion on the bar." Like,
Correct.
we're gonna mess with him a little bit. Here come
That's when
here
I
come
started.
the request for documents, right?
That's exactly how I felt when I started. I felt like every attorney was trying to punk me.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
they would call, they make threats, they become aggressive, and they're
Okay.
like, they think you don't know anything, and they're like, let's see if we can, pull a fast one on him. And you're like, okay, I'm a lawyer too. I went to law school too. I can figure this out, and I'm going to take my time. I'll contact people that I know who can help me, and we're going to get our client the best possible result.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I
So
read.
what I was saying about family law,
Oh yeah.
sorry, I kind of got distracted. I feel like family law chose me, as opposed
Okay.
to me choosing family law, because I looked at different things. I looked at criminal law, I looked at estate planning, I looked at personal injury, and the field that kind of was naturally growing for me was family law. And
Okay.
whether it was when I was in law school trying to get classes, whether it was when I was trying to get an internship, or someone that was trying to help me, and then later on when it was for me trying to find clients, it's consistently been family law.
Interesting. Okay. And there are a lot of things in California family law that are different, but I want to know. So first of all, I want to ask more about the firm. So on LinkedIn, I saw that it said the Geller firm grew 45% in 2023. So congratulations on your growth. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we have year over year have gotten busier and busier. We primarily focus on divorce cases, child custody cases, and domestic violence cases. Those are the most common types of cases that will
Mm,
appear in family law. In terms of some of the things that you're dealing with, I mean, most divorce cases you're dealing with child custody, child support, spousal support, division of marital assets. Sometimes when you're dealing with child custody, there's things that go into that. So you might have a domestic violence case. When
mm,
there's a domestic violence case, that gets messier. Or you could have mental health issues, or you could have substance abuse. So all of these different things will have an impact on child custody.
okay.
When it comes to support and marital property division, most of that is a numbers game.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Like, so tell us some of the maybe the different. I know all states are different, but I know California has probably some. I don't want to say outlandish, but some real different rules. Like, is there something that like you could share with us, maybe about the community property law, or spousal support, which might be sort of similar. Like, what can you tell us about that in California?
Absolutely. So California is a community property state. If you don't know what that means, what it means is that anything that a couple has from the date of marriage to the date of separation is community property. Now, the only exceptions to that will be if there's a prenup. That will obviously be an exception because that puts away the default rules.
Right.
If you have an inheritance, if you have a gift, or if you had separate property before the date of marriage or anything you earned after the date of separation, those become separate property. But the presumption is if you earned it during marriage, it's going to be split 50-50 during divorce. Now, a lot of people are upset about that because if you have one spouse that earns all the money, the other spouse that takes care of the household items, you're like, well, I earned everything. Why should I have to split it? Because the idea is it's community sweat.
Right.
So one person had to be pulling things at home for you to be able to go and earn. So since you earned it together, it gets split 50-50. Now, some people are able to get over this part. Okay, fine. I'll give him or her, half my stuff. That's fine. But what they really get upset about is support. Child support they can live with because everyone wants to support their child. What they really struggle with is when the other party starts asking for spousal support. And for spousal support, there's a couple ways we do this. So for temporary spousal support, there's a calculator that we use called the Disselmaster. But when it comes to post-judgment support, we have to go through these factors under the family code, specifically family code section 4320. And there's specific factors like marital standard of living, based on how much education one person has. So there's a bunch of factors that you have to go through to see what support should be. So it's not black and white, it's a little bit gray. Now, there's also no cap on support except for the marital standard of living for post-judgment support. And there's absolutely no cap for child support. So a lot of the time you have these really wealthy people and they're like, well, do they really need this much money to be supported? Like, how much money do I have to, even if I make more money, why do they get a cut?
Yeah.
Right. And the idea is the children have the right to enjoy both parents' income. And then the idea behind spousal support is when you have a separation, both parties are supposed to enjoy the standard of living they had during marriage.
Right.
But that's also very difficult to do because now you have two households, you have two rents or two mortgages, you have two cable bills, you have double the expenses. So being able to maintain that standard of living is almost impossible.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now, you were asking about different states. So other states, they're not community property states. There's equitable distribution, which is New York, or you have a state like Texas, for example. And I'm not familiar 100% with Texas law, but I know a person who literally moved to Texas, got residency there, lived there long enough so that he could file for divorce in Texas because they have a cap on support.
Wow.
And then after he got his divorce, he lived there a little bit longer, then he came back to California. And he got away with, when he told me the numbers, he's like, in California, my support would have been like $22,000 a month.
Oof.
And he's like, in Texas, my support is like $5,700.
Wow.
So it was a drastic difference that he was telling me about. And I'm like, wow, like the law is drastically different because in California, it protects the underdog. In California, the higher income earner is getting penalized for being successful.
Yeah.
As opposed to other states, that's not happening.
Is there like, do they look at the length of marriage? Like if you're married, do you have to be married like 10 years or 5 years in California?
So they do. In California, it's presumed to be a long-term marriage if you live 10 years or more. It's presumed to be a short-term marriage if you lived less than 10 years. So in terms of support for a short-term marriage, the presumption is that you should pay support for 50% of the duration of the marriage.
Wow.
For a long-term marriage, the court doesn't actually have jurisdiction to terminate support.
Okay.
A lot of this is negotiation, and you're trying to prove the 4320 factors.
Wow. Well, we'll say this. Sounds like you know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
That's interesting stuff, man. That's like sad though, right? Like you see these people coming in and what would you say, like what kind of characteristics does it take to make a good family law attorney, like when you're dealing with divorce, custody, spousal support. I mean, empathy. Like, what would you say?
I mean, empathy is huge. You got to be calm. You also have to be realistic. If you have a client coming in and they have unrealistic expectations, they're gonna be disappointed down the line. You have to tell them what the law is. They have to be aware of what is most likely going to happen in court. And if they know what's going to happen, it's very possible that they're going to settle. When you have unrealistic expectations and they think that you're Harvey Specter and you're always going to win,
Yeah.
You watch that show?
Oh yeah. Well, my wife likes it. I watch with her sometimes. Yeah.
So if they think you're Harvey Specter and they think that you're going to win no matter what the facts of the case are, that's just going to be an unrealistic result, and they're going to
Right.
be very
Okay.
upset.
Yeah. Don't overpromise and don't.
course.
I think that's huge for sure.
I do the opposite.
You do.
I try to prepare them for the worst.
Yeah.
And then I try to deliver that.
I think that's like I don't want to say typical, but I think that's a lawyer tactic to tell them either how hard something is to obtain and then going out and doing it, that sort of thing. But yeah. So do you ever see yourself leaving the practice of law? Like, what would you do next after? What are your thoughts?
It's possible. I have a couple things I've considered doing in the future. One thing, like I said, maybe potentially one day if I wanted to go back into healthcare, I might do some healthcare administration.
Okay.
Another thing that interests me is maybe going into the tech world. I mean, I live in the Bay Area, so
Oh, cool.
everyone I meet, is in tech, and they're always trying to pull me in that direction.
Really? Okay.
So that's another option. And then I'd say if there was a third option, it'd probably be maybe go into politics.
Nice. All right. Very good. So what are your goals with the law firm in the next 5 years or so?
I would say probably hire some associates and try to expand and grow a little bit. Try to see if we can serve a greater area.
Okay.
For the most part, we're busy, but I'd like to be able to expand and maybe serve other areas. For the most part, I just serve the immediate Bay Area counties. I don't really go outside of the Bay Area.
Do you have 2 offices though? I saw
We
2
do.
offices. Okay, that's great.
We have one in San Francisco, then we have one in the East Bay in Walnut Creek.
Okay. Come on, your mom's gonna be proud now though, huh? No?
She's proud when I get her out of trouble.
Really? She's getting into trouble, huh? All right.
Not like criminal stuff, but like when she gets into trouble with little things, and I figure out a way to navigate that. Then she's like, oh, okay, all right, maybe the law degree was worth it.
There you go. She'll come around, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Did I leave anything out today? Was there anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to chat about?
I think you chatted about pretty much everying.
All right, good.
This has been great.
Yeah, man, for sure. Congrats on all your success. I'm really glad to finally do this. Hopefully, we'll definitely stay in touch and everything.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, yeah, stay right there. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in to Michael Geller's episode, San Francisco Family Law Attorney. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.